Good evening, everybody. It's Bryan Caprice, and welcome to our Forex strategies using price action analysis. This is one of our weekly broadcasts, and this is something that I think is our second one. So if you guys are coming back for a round of number 2 here, thank you so much for coming back out. I definitely appreciate you guys. And if you have questions, make sure that you guys have the email address right down there, support@keeptradingsimple.com, and you're more than welcome to email me and let me know if you have any questions about anything I say today. All right. So with that being said, let's just go ahead and jump in here. All right, let's click that, and here we go. All right, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start off by telling you a little bit about who I am, just so you guys have an idea of kind of where my analysis is coming from. I have a little bit different of a strategy than a lot of other people out there. I'm not a big indicator-based trader. I read price action, I read candles and candles formation, and it's different than some people are used to. So basically, I started trading at the end of 2000, beginning of 2001 timeframe. So I've gone through a couple of market crashes, explosion cycles back and forth, and I took the original retail trader path, right? I started with stocks and options, ended up after about 6 years finding foreign currencies. I've traded with full-time jobs that are non-trading related. After doing that for a number of years, I ended up going inside and actually becoming a financial advisor, working for one of the big 3 advisory divisions. Learned kind of a different side of trading, not so much about not so much about how to trade an individual stock. Oops. Oop, I don't know if you guys got feedback on that one or not, but I did. Whoops. Oh, you guys still there? Yep, was lagging on that one. Sorry about that one. I don't know what was going on there. All right, so, but basically being on the inside of that realm, I was able to get a kind of new appearance on things and figure out really what was kind of happening behind the scenes, right? It was interesting. I realized very, very fast that even though these advisory divisions, you think that they have all the answers, they didn't necessarily have them. So it was very interesting. And then after that, I actually left and actually went back into the education sector and was teaching people how to trade. And I was very, very lucky that I actually got to meet some market makers. So I don't know if anybody out here has ever actually met a market maker and asked a market maker, what do they do? How is it that they trade? Very, very interesting. I got a completely different, entirely another view on the markets. And I realized that a lot of the tools and things like that people really use to trade aren't what the market makers, the guys on the inside, are actually doing. So completely changed everything the way I was trading. So again, that's why my style is a little bit different. Again, it comes from not only the retail trader path where most people are, but seeing it from the inside, from the big money on the, the big banks and institutions, and then also seeing it from a market maker standpoint. So that's why I do what I do. I've developed a number of different strategies for Nadex. I'm one of those people that I believe in using technology. So I am also not a trader that sits in front of the computer for 18 hours a day. I don't have 27 monitors in my room. I don't get a suntan when I'm trading. It doesn't work that way, right? I had 3 just because I do, a couple different things at the same time. But again, strategy is slightly different. So if you have questions about it, you're more than welcome to message me and I'll answer questions about it. All right. So let's cover the Nadex risk disclaimer before I cover any charts or talk about any type of news here. So trading on Nadex involves risk and may not be appropriate for all investors. Trading can be volatile and investors risk losing the cost at the end of the transaction, including their fees. Now, information presented here within this presentation is for information and education purposes only and should not be considered an offer to buy or sell any financial instrument on Nadex or elsewhere. Okay. Now, any trading decisions that you make are solely your responsibility at your own risk. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results, and Nadex contracts are based on underlying asset classes, including Forex, stock index futures, and commodity futures. Nadex is a registered trademark of the IG Group. Okay. Now, with that being said, my favorite part of the entire presentation is the top 3 news of the week. All right. So for those of you that are unfamiliar with what we do, what I'll do is I break down the top 3 biggest news releases. Now, just so this is out there, in my opinion, news releases don't actually move price. All they do is act as a catalyst, and they move price to where it would have went before the news came out. Okay, it would have got there. It has just taken a lot longer to do it. So for me, I'm very, very much a news trader. I love news. I think it's great for the fact that I can literally say, hey, listen, you know what, on Friday morning at 8:30, I know there's something that potentially could move the market big. And for me, what I do is I break it down. These are my top 3 news releases of the week. And I try to pick different countries or different times. This week, it just happened to be that 2 are loaded with the United States. There's no guarantee that these forecasts are going to miss, but I will give them a somewhat higher than normal percentage of I guess, probability that we may have a miss. And even if we don't, we will probably have some market movement because they are big, high quality releases, considered high impact. First one is going into Friday is going to be U.S. retail sales. U.S. retail sales is extremely important for the market because it's basically what is the consumer buying, okay? One of the larger kind of leading indicators into the markets, it's, especially going into the kind of the holiday season. Again, retail sales is one of my favorite numbers to trade. Now, Wednesday is also extremely important, CPI, okay? Anytime you're talking about CPI, we're talking about inflation. Inflation directly has to relate back to interest rates. Interest rates not only affect the stock market, but they also affect the dollar tremendously, okay? So excellent, excellent, excellent trading opportunity. Again, it's at 8:30 in the morning, so it can really establish where the market's going to move for that day if you're an indices trader. Now, Thursday night, I'm going to mix it up on you guys a little bit. I'm talking about the Aussie unemployment rate and employment change. Now, again, it's basically their version of non-farm payroll, but for the Australian market. Now, again, one of the nice things about trading Australian news at night, and you guys have heard me say this more than once if you ever attended the morning sessions, was the fact that because Aussie news is at night, you don't have U.S. traders and U.S. money and really even European money out there. So it's just the kind of Asian money, again, Australia and Japan, absolutely great trading opportunity. If you're not trading it at night, get in there and try it out. Okay, some of these news releases are great, and if you match it with the correct binaries, absolutely some of my favorite things to trade. Okay, so those are my top three opportunities for the week. What I want to do is I want to actually run through the week and kind of, again, this is where I start my analysis for trading, but also I want to run through the week and kind of get a kind of an overall game plan, right, going into the week, because again, it's Monday night. So today you can see we had a lot of pound data, and again, the pound was really the only thing reacting today because we were more or less flat for the day. But going into tomorrow, we have some interesting data. Pound news very, very early, this average earning, not really a huge mover, so I'm not too focused on it. And then again, we have a little bit of FOMC data, but tomorrow night is when we start having some very interesting data. Now, wage price index for the Aussie, that can tend to be a bit of a mover. New Zealand is another one. Now, we're expecting a rate cut in New Zealand. Now, I know that you cannot trade a New Zealand dollar inside with Nadex, but a lot of times what happens with New Zealand tends to happen with the Australian dollar as well. So there will typically be some spillover effect with some type of a rate cut. And again, because they're geographically located in a similar region, a lot of times when you see New Zealand data, it will affect the Aussie dollar as well. Okay, so just kind of a little side note there. There may be some trading opportunity tomorrow night in the Aussie dollar because of this news. Now, going into Wednesday, we start off at 4:30 a.m. Eastern time with the pound CPI. Very, very important, okay? This is a number that also has the ability to move things around. Obviously, Brexit is what dominates right now, the pound situation. But again, they've been keeping themselves out of a recession, and something like CPI and inflation definitely kind of stacks into that. They're not cutting interest rates, they're not raising interest rates, they're kind of holding firm. But again, if this number gets a little bit wonky, hey, we can start seeing some movement in the pound. And again, there's really not a whole lot moving the pound right now besides some Brexit talk and a couple news releases. Besides that, it's more or less flat. 8:30, we go into the US CPI. Again, very, very important number, okay? And if you guys see, the click is not working today on the site. But again, this is one of those news releases that when it misses, and it misses, more often than not, great trading opportunities at 8:30 in the morning, okay? Going down, we have Chairman Powell testifying. Powell's always worth, he can always have, some potential fireworks that are around him. So just be cautious in any of your positions that you have on. Don't forget that 10:30 in the morning are the typical reversal times. It may be a little bit slower on Wednesday just because Powell is speaking, okay? And again, 7:30 at night, that's where we have the unemployment change and the unemployment rate coming in. Again, two great releases. They're kind of stacked on top of each other, so it's considered one release. It's Australia's version of non-farm payroll, which is by far the most, kind of influential kind of monthly release that is out there. All right, so again, great for the Australian dollar traders. Going into Thursday, we have pound retail sales. Now again, this is if with my top three, this is probably a very, very close four. I know it's super early. If you're on the West Coast, maybe it's a little bit late. If you're on the East Coast, it's a little bit early. If you're anywhere else in the world, again, it's probably a good time for you to trade these things. But again, the forecast is a 0.2, and last time it came in as a 0, completely flat. Seeing retail sales ticking up, that's great for the pound. That's going to bring some pound strength in there. And one of the things, and I'll show it to you in the chart, we've had the euro pound really kind of hovering at more or less a yearly low right now, right? Or kind of far down from where we've been all summer. We get some strength in this thing. This could really start breaking some levels to the downside. So there could be some really great trading opportunities with this retail sales number. And again, we go back down, we see PPI, which again, that fluctuates between a medium and a high release. I don't think it's going to be very big this time, just because again, with Powell testifying, people will be kind of hinged on what he's saying. 11 o'clock on Thursday, and again, because of the holiday today, crude oil inventories was bumped back one day. So it's 11 a.m. on Thursday, not Wednesday this week. And again, don't forget, you can trade commodities with Nadex, all right? Nadex binaries on crude oil. One of my students, he just absolutely loves them. I mean, he has multiples every week. He's posting stuff about different setups he has on crude oil. Great way to trade oil. If you're brand new to oil, Nadex is a wonderful way to do it. So don't hesitate to check that out on Thursday morning at 11. And then at 9:45, the BOC is speaking. I don't expect too much movement from that. I think they're kind of on the borderline-ish recession. That's just my personal opinion on there. But I don't think, even though it's considered a high impact release, I don't think we'll get too much. I think everybody will wait until Friday when we have core retail sales for the United States. Now, it is a single release, meaning that there is no other kind of counterbalance. A CAD medium release, somebody speaking is not going to, kind of debunk that or whatever. But I think it will be interesting. Both numbers are expected to be a little bit higher, showing good kind of selling. If these two numbers come in negative like they were last time, whew, I'm pretty sure we're going to have a negative weekend. not a negative weekend, but I don't think Friday would be great for the indices if this number comes back, comes in bad. So typically it does tick up a little bit. Again, you're having your month over month. You're getting your kind of your fall, kind of seasonal change kind of bumps in there. So I don't expect it to be horrible, but again, if it does come in as a surprise, I don't have a crystal ball, I would expect that the indices are going to be down for the day and we're going to have some movement in the dollar. All right. So just be cautious of those things. So with that being said, let's jump into the charts. Okay. This is my favorite part of the presentation. All right. So going in. Okay. Aussie yen is a very interesting situation. Okay. Like I said, we have some Aussie news this week that I think is going to provide some nice opportunity. Now, this one had a little bit of a gap on Sunday. And for those of you that have followed me, you guys know that I have a Sunday night gap strategy, and this one actually fulfilled it and then kind of moved. But it wasn't a huge mover this week. It was a little bit more muted. Again, not a whole lot going on. This one is still in a reactionary phase. You guys can see this kind of blue area and the dots. This is where we bounced off of last Thursday. And since that time, it's just been retracing. And the market ended here. We went into Friday. And then since that time, it's moved a little bit. I mean, we basically have one little bump here and then just sideways movement. So where it is right now, it's actually sitting in an area of buyers. I kind of like when charts and prices are in areas of buyers and sellers when we have news. We'll see how much movement it has till tomorrow, but going into some of the larger Aussie news releases this week, I would say that I'm probably a bit more bullish in this one. Now, one of my favorite strategies is a news breakout strategy, and I use Nadex binaries for that because I'm able to keep the risk a little bit lower, okay? Again, you guys saw it inside of the disclaimer. Again, when you're buying a binary, obviously you can only lose what you put into the trade. Hence why I like taking these, because I'm able to control my risk and use a little bit farther out of the money position. And I'll use that for buying or selling. This one this week, I'm kind of leaning a little bit more towards being a little bit more bullish. But again, we'll see what happens with news time. We have some time before that. And again, the reason I'm doing that is because of this area right here. You guys see that area right there? Again, price came down, gave us a retrace, and then that started this entire rally up, and it's had two attempts to put the push lower and held, and now we're running into an area right now. So nice little area there. I do like that one. If you guys are looking at it on the daily, again, nice bounce off this daily supply zone. Came down, and again, we're sitting inside of these ascending wicks. This is one of my favorite patterns to show where buyers are. You guys can see these two candles right here, this lower red and then this higher green. Until we get past that one, I'm not looking to get short, and even if we were, there's another area right below it. So in this one, I think we're reaching basically the profit target from the original short from last Thursday. And again, looking for some type of a bounce, most likely back to the top side, okay? Looking at Aussie yen, Aussie dollar. So this one had the same kind of turn, right? Now, this red line was a profit target. This gold line was a second profit target for us. We actually just hit this. This is for my students' chart schools. But you can see, again, we bounced off this same type of peak that we had before, okay? Now, this was based off of a 4-hour zone, and prices rallied all the way back to the downside, okay? Now, we do have a little bit more to go. There's a little bit of a pattern here, but I'm very, very cautious of this level down here at 68.20. And again, last time the price came down, if you look to the left, it's in the middle of a long extended range bodied candle. There's not really a whole lot of kind of telltale signs that there's buyer there. But what we had some basing, some sideways movement, and then boom, an explosion out the top side. So it's definitely an area in here that I need to watch out for, okay? I'm not gonna turn this red because it's not a sell, but we'll turn it blue for kind of a precautionary. And you can see, again, on the 4-hour, you can see the zone, right? Popped here, up, came back down, based, and then that was what led to this rally. So I'm looking for this area here over at 68.21 as a potential area for somewhat of a reversal. It's going to do one of two things. One, that's going to act as a buying area, and we're going to pop, get some type of a confirmation to the top side. Or, here's my technical term, and you guys have heard this before, we're going to have a momentum breakout to the downside, and we're going to have that Harry Potter trade that I talk about, right? That kind of lightning strike where we break the zone, we retest it, and then continue to push farther. Now, as far as that momentum trade, I am a little bit more cautious about that because you can see down here, as we marked off last week, we have 3 areas of buyers, okay? So if we do break through this zone, we really only have, again, even if it pulls back, we really only have about 25, 30 pips before the first zone, about 50 pips before the second zone, and about 70 before kind of the ultimate target on that one, okay? So it's there, but we got some kind of speed bumps we're gonna have to kind of push through. So we'll see what it does when it reacts off this zone. Again, any type of confirmation to the top side, potentially be going long. If we can drive into this zone before the news releases, I'm all over that. I like that one. Okay, I'm a big fan of that one. And another thing too, I want to point out on this one, again, it is a 4-hour zone that I'm looking at right here. So if price does, for some reason, start to rally back up again before we get news, and then we get a spike into this zone, this could be a great level for a parabolic retracement, okay? For those of you that have attended that webinar, you'll know what I'm talking about, all right, for somewhat of a retracement to the top side. Now, looking at euro pound, I mentioned that just a second ago. All right, so you can see, euro pound hasn't had a whole lot of excitement. You know, we are really, really consolidated, very, very small, a pop, and then a retrace back up again. And then again today, we had some movement, some pound strength coming in here. And a lot of this has to do with the pound basically being able to hold itself out of a recession, just barely, but it's holding out of that recession. Again, gave us a little bit of strength there. They're not cutting rates or anything, right? And again, we've had a little bit of a retest. It came back up. It grabbed the level it was supposed to and has pushed back to the downside. Now, very interested in this pair this week for a couple of reasons. Now, you can see there's a lot of gold bars underneath of it. There's 2 different zones in here. And again, on this one, it was probably better over here. I should probably change the color of these to make it a little bit easier to see. But as I'm talking about that, 2 areas right below where we are, right? So for me, what I'm doing is I'm trying to figure out, are either of these two going to act as a bounce? And I'm looking for some type of a new spike into them. Now, this zone didn't quite get hit. It did come down a little bit lower, right? It came up and it pulled back up, and you can see there was a prior zone here. So if I continue this zone across to there, you can see it's kind of doing that bit of a Harry Potter, right? We broke through, we're pulling back up again, and now it's starting to head out the downside, okay? Now, there is a smaller trade in here. There is a way to take a little bit smaller risk on this one to kind of look for this as a profit target. The 85.50 range, again, it is a psychological level. It does end in 5.0. So again, where we are now, it's only about 30 pips. It is not a huge mover. I would expect not a lot of movement until we get down to news time. But there's a couple ways you can play this. If we get into news time and we're still hovering around this area, this was a prior level of buyers and is now acting as a level of sellers. These are great little setups. If you can catch a call spread at the kind of the ceiling area, again, you can limit your risk on this one and take it and trade it very, very similar to what, just like it was spot currency or anything else out there, right? It'll give you that kind of value. Another thing too is, again, if you can jump onto the smaller kind of duration binaries, you can also get something in there for a little bit less risk as well to the downside. Now, again, be cautious if you're going to use the dailies. Again, it is only about 30 to 30, about 40 pips to the downside. So you're going to have to get a little bit closer to to at the money, but that does also increase your risk in a trade. Remember, if you're at the money, you're more or less 50 risk, 50 reward type trade. It requires your accuracy to be a lot higher versus using something that has a little bit less risk. Okay. Totally personal preference. Everybody's world is different. It's entirely up to you. My personal preference is I prefer the little bit out of the money. I'll take the I'll take the risk that we're going to get a little bit more movement on it, and again, take my profit when we hit the appropriate zone. Okay, now you guys are going to figure that out on your own. Now, looking across at euro yen. Now, euro yen today. Looking across, you guys can see pound yen had a great day. Okay, euro yen, it was okay. Right, we didn't get tons in there, right? We were calling for a Harry Potter, but we never really got it, right? We talked about a pop below, and all it did was it came down, it tagged the kind of the bounce target and shot straight back up again. But now we're starting to see that where we're starting to get a little bit more of a bounce to the downside. But I would say, looking at this one on the daily still, we're still kind of in that sideways trend. We did gap down. Wasn't really the greatest gap. I was hoping for a little bit more. I was hoping we would gap past this gold bar. but it didn't. It literally bounced off of it, and then we had the gap, you know, on the daily. You can see we basically closed right on top of it in that first 4 hours. So a little tiny bit of a pop, drop, and then sideways, but we're exactly where we were on Friday. As you guys can see, this little green candle right here is our Friday wick and body, and here's where we are right now. So really, in essence, we took a big kind of push down and then a push right back up again because of news, and then we're exactly where we're Friday. So not quite the same movement in this one as we had inside of the Euro Pound. Again, Monday without a whole lot of news, it's just being a little bit more flat on this one. I'd like to see a very clean break of this area. Profit targets on this one, if you're going to look at this, the downside would be 119.62. Area to the top I'm looking for is kind of, I do like the way that this is formed here. Now this has been this is a lot of candles, right? This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 candles in this kind of area here. But one thing I like about this, and this goes really back to understanding price action, we have a wick here, a lower wick, a lower wick, a lower wick, a lower wick, and a lower wick. When you're creating this type of kind of, you know, like fuzzy caterpillar, right, to the downside, that's showing you that there's sellers, 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 and then sellers sitting in this one right here. So this isn't a bad area. And again, using the kind of predefined risk, again, there's some potential trade setups coming off this area at 120.63 to 120.75. It's about a 12 pip zone, so it's very, very small. Ideally, we'd like to get that on a spike, but the way that this one kind of drove down, if we can get enough, you know, power to push back up again, I'd potentially be looking to take some shorts off that area. Okay. Now looking at euro dollar. Let's see for this to load up right quick. All right, so euro dollar. This one is driven all the way back to the downside. Okay, we've pushed all the way back down, and we're starting to approach levels where we need to start looking for buying opportunities. Okay, as you can see, last week we had a couple different targets to the downside. We had one here, and the ultimate one was this top green line, and we've turned and kind of flipped a little bit. All right, and again, kind of doing the same thing we saw in the euro yen. We saw a little bit of movement and a little bit of a pop, but it really hasn't changed too much, right? You guys can see that here's the Friday candle. And again, we had a little bit of a push up and then just kind of starting to pull back down again. So not really a whole lot of directional movement. If you're looking at it on the daily, we do have what's called a downtrend setup, looking for some type of an entry level. And this was a 4-hour zone that we had talked about last night in my group. And we got super close and didn't quite make entry on it, okay? That happens sometimes, and we joke about it, like, oh, we missed it by a few pips. And it's true, okay? Our entry was at this level here at 110.50, or at 110.45. And we only got to 110.42. So sometimes that happens. We end up getting front run. We miss the position. We were looking for a short to go lower. Again, didn't quite get there. Looking at right now, any of the zones, there was a bit of a small entry here earlier today. You guys have heard me say this before, but here's a failure to go higher type situation. Had you been watching this one triggered at about 11:30 a.m. Eastern time today. We had a nice kind of turning point. Again, got front run, pushed down, pulled back up again, failed to go higher, and then dropped. And now it's about up. I mean, we're talking about what, from 27, talking about 10 pips lower than where we are right now. Nothing explosive, you know, slightly grindy. And again, looking at this one for the day, it's only moved 10 pips in the last 24 hours. So not really a huge position or a huge mover right now. There's not really a whole lot, you know, more we can talk about on that one, right? Again, I wouldn't say that I'm bullish or bearish. I'm kind of neutral at this point on this one. Again, downtrend setup, but it's going into an area where we've seen buying pressure. So again, I don't like selling into an area of buyers. It's just personal preference. Going across to pound yen. So pound yen, as you guys can see, this one has moved about 80 pips, which is less than its daily ATR. Its daily ATR is about, let's see, it was 115-ish last week. Let's go across to our true average range, and actually I guess we're down to 108, right, for this one right now. So again, all this flat movement is actually kind of sucked it back down again. This one had a little bit of a rally, and as you guys can see, we had a level of basing here kind of marked off, and we tagged it earlier today. I'd actually hit it about 7:30 this morning, and then there was a bit of a drop to the downside. Not a huge mover. It only moved about double what the risk was. You would have had to use some shorter term binaries. This one triggered at about 11 o'clock this morning. And we had, let's see, only a run of about 37, but again, that's 3.5, you know, that's 3.5 strike prices on a 2-hour binary, okay, to the downside. What I'm looking for in this one is I'd like this one to rally a bit more. Okay, we've had attempts up into our selling zone, haven't quite gotten there, right? This 141.00, again, big psychological level because it has 2 zeros on there. There's been plenty of opportunities to get short in here. I'd really like to get something up in this level. Now, I'd like it if it was a little bit, we had a little bit more time, right? Unfortunately, this pair is not a touch bracket pair. The pound yen or the pound dollar is, the pound yen is not. This would be one of those ones that I really like it if it was, but when we come up back in this area, I think there's going to be some nice little short positions that we can take off this one. Again, you got to understand what you're entering with. For me, late in the week, probably not as much of a spread trade for me because, again, I want some time for it to be able to unfold. But there's a lot of potential this week with a couple of these, again, the pound retail sales numbers. Looking across here, again, average earnings, no, but CPI on Wednesday morning could potentially give us that pop we need. Looking at retail sales on Thursday could also give us that potential pop. So Wednesday and Thursday of this week, two great opportunities to be able to trade this position. Again, if we get just a little bit of a pop, definitely looking for some binary action there. All right, definitely liking that one. And again, make sure you control your risk. All right, don't get too crazy with this one. Would not, me personally, again, everybody has to trade their own accounts. You're responsible for your own trades, but I would not be using an at the money if we got back up into this zone. I'd be using something a little bit lower, control my risk, and actually setting, for me personally, I would also be setting a working order, take it off a little bit, probably before we get back into this zone. All right, back into the, probably the 140 is not bad, but I'll probably use 139.75-ish in this area is what I'll be using as a profit target. So I'll be looking to kind of take over something along those lines, okay? If we can get up into this zone or get some type of a pop into that zone, all right? All right, looking at pound dollar. Now, pound dollar is a touch bracket pair, okay? So what I'm finding, and again, I don't have as much experience with touch brackets as I do with calls and call spreads and binaries, but I'm starting to get more and more into the positions just because it's giving me a little bit more time to be correct. And again, it's just because you do what you're used to and people don't like change. But one of the things that I like about this one, again, this is at a few opportunities. You guys can see it right here, right? We had this level of basing right here, right? There's your level of basing. There's your pop. And again, it's not a perfect draw, right? There's the perfect draw from the top of this wick. You can see it came across and there was a bit of an entry and then it kind of got really, really slow, okay? This was also another kind of spike up with price, right? Starting from about 5:30 this morning. I mean, went crazy at 7 o'clock and then it started to kind of pull back down again and really kind of start to flatline. Now, if you're in this position, again, you may want to take profit, again, potentially lower down here. Had you taken this one, again, for touch brackets, this was actually not a bad touch bracket trade. We have 3 days till expiration, actually 4 days till expiration still. I guess we're into the 4-day countdown. But looking up here on the top side, it's over here, what, 128.80? There were some positions with kind of top side that were pretty nice over there, especially on the spike up to here where it's up to basically 129. There was actually a touch bracket on this one, a 129.41, which gives you a little bit of risk in there. But again, with this price kind of pulling back down again, it's about what, 90 pips? 90 pips already down in your direction. And again, that one is, kind of treated like a spread right now. So not a bad little kind of spike on that one, especially earlier in the week. Again, what I like about that one is the fact that it gives you the longer duration versus a binary. Okay, so that's kind of what I'm looking for this position. Again, downtrend setup on the daily. It did pull back up into a 4-hour. I expect this one again to have some more bursts and then it'll go flat after that. Just because, again, everybody's exhausted because of Brexit. All right, but do like this one more to the downside. Still bearish this position. Again, if we get somewhat of a close below the 128.40 or 128.50 area, right in the spacing area, I'd be looking at another kind of stumbling block over here at 128.30, and then we're clear down to 128.04, basically 128 flat, which should be obviously right here at the start of this move. Okay, that's where we were. Now, for those of you, again, that know the Sunday night gaps, guess what we had here? We had another Sunday night gap play all the way to the top side. It actually went past where the projected target would be, okay? If you guys know that one, again, if you guys don't know that one, hang around. I'll kind of share it in pieces. But again, nice Sunday night gap play all the way back up. Great little run, even some nice movement on that one, with entry here, about 90 pip movement. So that was a nice one. That was a nice little grab. But again, at this point, I am now flipped. I am now looking bearish, and I am now looking for price to run back down to really the 128 flat area. Okay. Dollar Swiss. So dollar Swiss only down about 28 today. Again, not a huge position. And again, a lot of that has been retracing. You guys can see in the last hour, this one is up 0.08%. So again, we'll expect to see a retrace on the chart, and that's what you can see. You can see that this one has been pulling down to the downside. Now, this is a level we marked off last week. Okay, we talked about if we could break this zone up top. Again, there's a couple different ways to get into the entry on this one. Again, it was a failure to go higher situation. It was a daily zone. It also corroborated with a 4-hour zone. And last time we hit that area, literally price shot straight back down again, pulled away pretty strong from it. So again, it's in this area playing with wicks, right? And again, nice movement. I mean, 44 pips to the downside in a day is not a bad position. If you're using, again, out of the monies, gives you a little bit better of a risk to reward ratio on this one versus using something like an at the money. Had you been at the money, you really didn't take too much risk. If you've been doing an at the money up here on the flip, again, price move 2 strike prices lower, so you would have been okay on that position. Where we are now, again, it is pulling back from a higher time frame selling zone. Okay, so I'm trying to see what it's doing. The way that it's reacting to me right now is this is its impulse move and this is its correction move. It's starting to look for more orders so it could turn and flip and sell. We'll see, again, with news this week for the US. Again, going into tomorrow, not a lot of US news, but going into Wednesday, again, this is where we'll see dollar strength or dollar weakness coming out of the CPI number. Because again, inflation is directly related to interest rates. Interest rates directly relate back to the dollar. Unless there's any type of geopolitical event in the next 24 hours, 48 hours, this one will be waiting for some data to start getting some really, some big legs on it. Now, to the downside, you guys can see also here, we have this area marked below, and this area is 98.60 down to 98.35, which is kind of a bottom side for me, right? I could draw the same thing here. I could duplicate this and bring this and say, okay, this is kind of what I'm looking at between a rock and a hard place. It's kind of formed a sideways channel. It's spent a lot of time down here at the bottom, and it really respects this top side here. So again, a lot of this is definitely more kind of leaning me towards a bearish position. It has pulled back. It is now kind of retracing a little bit to grab some more orders, and it does appear that it wants to go lower. And this zone that spent so much time there, not as worried about it. See a little hiccup here, but I really don't see too much until we get back down to this level. All right. All right, going across and looking at dollar CAD. So, we got to get the load. All right, dollar CAD. So, dollar CAD is kind of in, as I mentioned, kind of in one of those little Harry Potter things. It's momentum breakout, right? Up, pop, and then going higher. So, it's cleared a zone that I was looking for. I was trying to figure out how it was going to react, and it's spent some time here. It went here, kind of came up again, hit it again, pulled back, and then finally just blew through it. And again, what it's using is that area of sellers as an area of buying now, right? It came up, it retouched, and now it's kind of taken off the last 12 hours. It's more or less been straight up since about noon, right? It's been kind of just pushing back up again. And we've moved all the way from, what, 132.12 all the way up to 132.50. Okay, so again, about a 40 pip move during the day. Not horrible. I mean, for the day, you guys can see that the dollar CAD has only gone up 14 from where it was yesterday. But again, a lot of this is because it was here yesterday, last night, and it came down and then moved back up again. Again, bounce off a simple level. Looking at this one on the higher time frames, figuring out where it can go, at least on the daily, it looks like we probably have some clear, some clear sailing, maybe a little bit of a hiccup, but it looks like we can get back up to the 133 area. It's only about 60 pips from where we are. And even dropping down the 4-hour level, it looks like we're going to have a little bit of a hiccup around 132.80-ish maybe. But again, price pulled all the way back into this zone, this level of basing up here at 132.93. And at that point, we were within striking distance of round number. So I think we'll probably get, somewhat of a kind of a suck up into that 133.00 number. That wouldn't surprise me. And again, any type of dollar strength this week, any type of dollar news, this definitely has the ability to pop. As I mentioned too, again, we have some CAD news later in the week. Where was it? Right here. Again, this could be a kind of a slow move, but I think most of it will be driven by the dollar. I think the CPI on Wednesday will be kind of the first push, and again, maybe even a little bit tomorrow, all right, for any type of dollar strength. If we hear anything about trade war tomorrow, any tweets with trade war that it's kind of going away, that we're making agreements, again, that is another kind of catalyst that will spike us up over 133, okay? My other chat, guys, is I guess I'm saying some new words tonight that they haven't heard before, so they're, they're over there making a list of all the terminology I'm using for tonight's webinar. And lastly, looking at the dollar yen, okay? Dollar yen, we had this nice, you guys remember this? We're talking about the Qatar trade, right? We went very, very deeply into it, and we talked about how it probably wouldn't hold much longer. We went very, very deeply again, and then this next shot, number 3, went all the way through, tagged that upper level. Okay, we've gone down, we pushed, we've tagged the upper level, and then bam, we pulled back today. So kind of doing what we expected it to do, bouncing off these levels to the top side. Again, not really enough in this one to really start kind of weakening the dollar and kind of shooting it to the downside. Unfortunately, because we have a bit of a gap up here on the daily, makes it a little bit more confusing to look at on that analysis. But again, on the 4-hour, it's pretty clean. You can see what we have Again, we had, let's see, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday was right here. And again, Friday is what's pushing us down. All we did today was we pushed down and then retraced. So doesn't look like it moved a ton, but as you can see, basically here's the gap. And again, I'm going to say it again. Here's your gap strategy, okay? There's your risk in this trade. There was your entry. And again, your movement to the downside. Again, Sunday night gaps is a great strategy. And again, 30 pips to the downside. So another little kind of small one that you guys were able to take had you been taking these Sunday night trades. Again, as things start to come online Sunday nights, so does Nadex. Not a bad thing that you can start placing some trades for overnights. One of my students today had a great trade. He was done when he woke up this morning, and those are the ways that we love to do it. We always talk about how waking up in the green is the best way. Where we are now, again, we're still very, very high in the curve. We are bouncing off areas of selling. I would have to say at this point I'm a bit bearish. The only thing that, kind of where we are right now, I'm not going to use the current zone that it's in to sell off of. I'm not going to just take shorts here, even though we are in an area of selling. I think I'm going to wait until we get back up to this 109.40 area before I'm willing to take anything that's clean, right? We've already pulled away from it. At any moment, there could be some type of agreement signed with China, and which would eliminate, the trade war, which, again, my opinion is that it's not necessarily as big a deal as everybody's making it out to be. I was projecting it would all be done, in November at this time, and that's what we're starting to see. So I'm pretty sure by year end, it'll almost be completely done. There's just minor kind of hiccups here and there, but I'm pretty sure the agreement is done, and I think that's going to give us some dollar strength. I do think it'll bring us back up, but until we get back up, if you're not already in a position, I'd be holding off on this one until 109.40. And again, CPI, retail sales, any of those numbers has the ability to kind of bump that up that high. You're only talking about 30, 40 pips to that area, and then I'd be looking for somewhat of a retrace to the downside, okay? And again, you can trade that with binaries or spreads depending on the day. All right, so with that said, okay, that is the end of the charts. If you guys have questions, like I said, I know that I definitely do have a different trading style than a lot of people out there. Again, I focus on price action, candles, wicks. Again, this Monday we were a little bit slow. We didn't have a whole lot, but we do have a lot of news coming later this week. I do focus a lot on 4 hours, so if you have questions, you guys are more than welcome to email me, support@keeptradingsimple.com. The rest of the week at 9 o'clock p.m., we will have broadcasts on Twitch. Twitch.tv/KeepTradingSimple, as well as on Instagram. You'll be able to see some of the setups that we have. That's kind of it, guys. Thank you so much for joining me this week. I will be back on next Monday at the same time. Hopefully we get a little bit more Sunday into Monday movement. And for those of you that have been able to figure out kind of what my Sunday night gap strategy is, definitely next Sunday, go check those things out. Do the homework on Friday or Saturday, look to see where prices ended, and see if you guys can set up some of those Sunday night gaps for yourself. You guys have a great trading week, and I'll talk to you next week.